Ordinarily, autumn in Meriwether County would come in hard and sudden, like a stone hurled through a window. But this year it snuck in slow and mild, lingered there deceitfully while we waited for the axe to come down. The sky that morning was turquoise, empty of clouds, the altitude strung with elongated V's of migrating geese and a single contrail that resembled a surgical scar, the narrows between the high valley walls opening onto a broad vista of rangeland some distance below. I had expected ice patches to have formed on the pavement overnight, but the weather had remained stubbornly dry, even as temperatures closed in on the low 30s. I tipped open the wind wing and let the chill air blow through the cab of my pickup as I stretched and drank off the last dregs of coffee I had brought for the long southward drive from the town of Meridian. I had received a phone call at home the night before from an unusually distressed KC Sheridan. I had known KC for as long as I can remember, a pragmatic and taciturn cattleman whose family history in the area dated back to the late 1800s, much like that of my own. 3 generations of Sheridans had stretched fence wire, planted feed grass, and run rough stock across deeded ranch land that measured its acreage in the tens of thousands, and whose boundaries straddled 2 separate counties, one of which was my jurisdiction. But the decade of the 70s thus far had not been any kinder or gentler to cowboys than to anyone else, and Casey and his wife Irene had found themselves increasingly subject to the fulminations and intimidation of both local and federal government. While the Sheridan Ranch had once numbered itself among a dozen privately held agricultural properties in the region, Casey now found himself surrounded on 3 sides by a federally designated wildlife refuge that had swollen to encompass well over 300 square miles, a bird sanctuary originally conceived under the auspices of President Theodore Roosevelt's White House, all of which would have been perfectly fine and acceptable to the Sheridan family, given the understanding that the scarce water supply that ultimately fed into the bird sanctuary belonged to the Sheridans by legal covenant, as it had for nearly a century.